Yeah.
You already know?
Yeah, Liddy,
Hi.
or you're doing it?
Excuse me, I'm gonna do it.
Sure.
She's gone on a bereavement leave.
Do what?
She's gone on bereavement leave.
Oh.
So I'm going
What are you doing there, Mr. Yarborough?
Oh my gosh, the printer totally tweaked out on yours.
We're gonna be out here in 20 minutes.
Well, they just had a course session there.
There's a special fund.
Wedding is
I guess it's not podcast. Time's back at the rancho. Damn bartenders and overpours, what the hell? You want a double or a double? No,
Yeah. Can't believe Stanford didn't jump in the
Make it dirty.
I jumped though.
Oh, I feel contagious. Don't worry.
There's still time for this.
See you later, Mike. It was the first summer, first food fest.
How we doing, man?
We all took, I took.
Finally back to living.
Yeah, feeling better?
About 85%. I'm still congested and lost my voice.
Just thought I'd let you know
Good,
the
maybe you don't
crowd
have to
hates
talk to her.
bartending.
Did you see a dog?
You right now. There's a new strand of cold virus going around.
Super duper one?
Yeah, that goes.
So just take some Advil and ride it out?
Basically, because there's no it's a virus, so you should take
Oh, for trustee, I'm
antibiotics.
sorry. I was thinking.
Mucinex D,
Which
which has Sudafed.
Just the one
Right.
that came in and talked.
And,
I don't think you heard me.
And Tyler, did you use
Yeah, and a nasal spray, allergies drain.
Are you doing
No, it was not
It's
one.
pretty miserable.
I said,
It's not even
well,
your
oh,
Alan, did you hear that architects were back on the road Friday? Oh, were they? Yeah, I thought they did some core samples. Cool. Have, Dan Giles will fill us in a little bit of what's going on. Mr. McGinnis, you like how they put vouchers in the nutrition services in the House Bill 310 or 610?
I've just been sort of reading that, that's kind of interesting.
How they
It
marry
does a
those-
lot of stuff,
It does a lot of stuff.
yeah. So now I was like, real curious how, what all those implications are. It's interesting that the homeschool association is opposed to
Under what grounds?
well, takes out the guarantee of homeschool. So,
Yeah, I made a call into Kurt Miller, the SAM director. Hope to hear back from him tomorrow. Find out what our organization's input would be. But just this fact that they combine those two bills in from nutrition, food service, healthy kids, and school choice. They don't really marry very well.
Oh, we'll have to get out of here by then, I guarantee it.
Hey, you have a...
I just write something there, it's fine. Do what? Oh, yes. I always say.
Yes, you do. And
That's
you get all,
right.
but you
She's
get all
running
these.
the beer chair and go lick and split. You may not have a choice. We don't work for so.
Well, that's what I hear, I think Dawn is I heard that one about that.
It is, Shane. You're not following much blood out of you,
It's
right?
right.
Or your parent runs. Did you tear him up?
That's good.
Okay, so when Diana's an age, she's not gonna call me. I'm like, really, Diana? I've been doing this 20 years. She doesn't know for a reason. Did you? She's the same.
Yeah, it was quiet in there.
The big hole lost elections. Yeah, snowed Saturday night, that cold. Froze well. You hiding, Bill?
No, I'm isolating myself. I'm still contagious, so.
Behind the wall. Make sure that we address the
I don't know.
He's here though.
Don't tell me that's the same as because I'm not saying. Is Sophie coming?
Did I know his way?
so.
Okay, we'll wait.
30 seconds.
Not on camera, remember?
Yeah. Is that head on?
Not sitting in front of an mic. Can't see, like I'm not blocking it or anything.
Oh, is that right? Did it? Did it?
I know.
That's not that, I mean, that doesn't.
After like 2 years, I'm like, well, you're pretty close to that.
We had a record today on the boards of the show to tackle handling in school.
That's gonna come up in the school.
Thursday night, there's a lot of stuff. But they want to know if cool and wet, where you guys allow that to happen, then it's just on back, so you've never taken action on that. But apparently it's big out there right now.
Wow.
There's 18 states that allow it, or have no laws against it.
It died here.
What's that?
For teachers to pack handgun in school like that. No, legislature.
There's a Billings reporter that's been asking that question across the state, seeing what boards are allowing that to happen, in what districts, and the duration, and who gets to, how do you pick it?
We'll just go on water and then just
Well,
come back to our lunch time.
Yes. You
Okay.
shouldn't tell me differently. We met after school, so.
That's all right. Probably what I have, but you know.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and call it the meeting. Deb, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you haven't done so already, please turn off your cell phones and silence. Does anybody plan on having any public comment tonight of something that's not on the agenda? Mr. On?
It's gonna be with the interview process.
Okay, so we just need to have you sign in on that sheet, and then, we might not be able to comment on that, but we will definitely, listen to you, and if we can comment, they will, if not, we'll look into it. Okay? Okay. Does the board have any comments or observations?
Just that you put Timothy Peter McGinnis at the thing with the orange of Northern Ireland instead of the green.
I didn't do the decorations. You can have mine.
Quick, Shannon, through them.
Oh, Shannon, you're gonna ask Shannon? Wow!
Okay, we got blue, green.
Carl, this recorded.
Okay, anything else? Okay, public comment. Mr. Owen.
I was just looking at the clarification. I saw in the board minutes that we had a recommendation for Scott's hire as the principal, and then I wanted to know the process just a little bit more in depth of the assistant principal and activities director. So the interview process, the interview committee, like if I can get just clarification on because it was an interim position, how they're going about what committee they're gonna use, how they're going to set it up. Is there gonna be interviews and that process, the full process this time?
I'm gonna have Mr. Wells answer that.
Yeah, internal and external as well, like, just kind of clarification on how it's being opened.
I would quickly, because actually discussion doesn't really allow me to go into detail. But, at any time, my office is open, you can come by and see me and ask the same question. Two is there's a timing on it based on tonight's process. If the board approves the recommendation to hire administrators, then it rolls into the hiring process for the assistant principal, which if that doesn't, we can't go to the athletic director until we get the assistant principal, which we couldn't do until we got the high school principal, because the way that interim label read is if they didn't get those positions, then I automatically roll back into where they started, which would have pushed Scott back into assistant, and then an assistant back into the athletic director. So there was a timing process for the most of that. And then after board meeting tonight and we take action on approval, then high school principal and I and HR director, Mr. Elliott, will sit down tomorrow and start fleshing out what that looks like just for the assistant principal, because if that doesn't go well for the person, or he chooses not to accept or even interview for his position, then he automatically rolls into the athletic director. So the process is going to be fleshed out tomorrow. That's where we're at. But I can't speak on the AD because we don't know what that's going to look like until after the AP.
So it's that process, principal and assistant.
Yeah.
Anybody else? All right. Number one, approval of the February 13th regular board meeting minutes. Anybody have any changes or corrections? I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Any questions? Questions? Follow-up, nothing? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're gonna skip number 2 until Sophie gets here. Number 3, trustee suggestions for additional agenda items for future board meetings. Anybody have anything? No? All right. Number 4, superintendent's report, Mr. Waltz.
It's fairly lengthy, but we'll get through this quickly here. Recognition-wise, Sierra Garcia, that sat in for Sophie, if you remember, was one of 42 Montana students that was recommended for the presidential scholar candidate. 3.5 million students, 800 across the nation. She was one of 42. That's of the candidates. So I'd like to recognize her here. I was able to attend divisionals basketball in Hamilton last week. Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday I was there. And Folsom kids, amazing. Again, it's a privilege to see our kids in action. And not only on the court or what they're doing, but just who they are in general. So our kids represented well. I would like to acknowledge the cheerleaders. Hands down, every year we have cheerleaders that I get texts from people that they say, they're the best. And they really are. They again, perform very well. And our boys this year played the championship second, and they're moving on to state. So I'm stalling long enough that we're going to finally get our sleeper up here. So they did well. Some of the things that I went through this last month, I attended the tribal council presentation. I included the presentation in a slide presentation PowerPoint. You can see what it looked like. We had 30 minutes to present. It took me about 40, and I still need to go back and do elementary district. It was well perceived, and we didn't inundate the tribal council with a lot of data. We did bring students. We had about 17 students that came down and presented with us. So it went well. Superintendent travel. We had our superintendent travel meeting this last week. The Valley Reservation superintendent meeting. attended a budget symposium in Missoula, and of course divisionals. We are headed to National School Board Association March 25-27 with trustees McDonald, McGoricus, and Lake, and then we are headed to Helena with McDonald and McGinnis on March 13th. Hence the reason why we moved the board meeting next month, or this month. I had a meeting with the city mayor and also with Rotary in some partnership with really what came out of our color wars. And so we're still working on avenues of building communication within the community as well. I asked Dan Giles to be with us tonight in case we had any quick follow-up questions, but on facilities and transportation, Cherry Valley, you remember we had the Poly Schools grant that we're looking for about 1.2 to 1.4 million to replace that boiler. Currently, we have pumps and asbestos abatement and a lot of man hours trying to keep the basement and crawl space of Cherry Valley dry. We're not keeping it dry, we're just trying to keep it from flooding. And it's to the point where this weekend when I was coming back from Wyoming, I had thought that we might need to go to alone just to get the boiler fixed. It's leaking steam that bad. It's pretty ugly. I was told today that perhaps it's not that dire, but it's not good. And so we hope that Quality Schools grant comes through quickly so we can make some changes in Cherry Valley. With that being said, we're really not sure yet what Quality Schools grant will fund, and so took it a step further, and Alan and I had talked about this, is that maybe a second opinion might be of order. I'd like to know what it would look like, rather, if we don't get the Quality Schools grant and change out the boiler, is there another way of making that building HVAC and heated friendly, such as electricity? We drop power into those and run some type of heating through electric power instead of boiler. So I have Amerisco coming in, and they're going to give us a second opinion, which we may need if Quality Schools doesn't get funded. So they're coming in on March 3rd, March 14th. We're going to do a walkthrough there. We had an organization or a company come in and look at the seating in the auditorium of the high school. They did a walkthrough with Dan and Scott last week. Just remember that's part of that bond issue that we sold the public that we were going to look at. And so it's a spending proposition with replacing seats, and so we got somebody coming in and giving us a true, not over the phone, not a picture quote, but we really want to know what that looks like. And we also traded out T4. T4 was one of those buses, that activity bus that was in the shop as much as it was on the road. We traded that out for I call it a CrossFit bus. It does both. All right, it's activities and a school bus. If you have any questions about that, you can contact me as well. Mentioned lately that we are going to do a paper tiger showing, a screening, and that's really that trauma-informed instruction with kids that are affected by trauma. We're going to do that at the high school on the 23rd of this month, and I'm going to invite people across, all educators across the reservation in the valley, from Hot Springs to Our Lake. That'll be a 6:30 showing. 23rd, I switched that. We had a middle school concert on that same night, so I'm going to fire that out on the 23rd, not the 21st. And then last the reminders there is that our meeting moved to April 3rd, and spring break is coming up soon. And on the last note, I know it's been a long winter, but our special ed students were in Whitefish today, right? They're Whitefish, and taking advantage of more snow. There's snow shooting. A great day. So, there are people that are still happy and content with this white stuff that's still coming down. So, it's been a busy month.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do. Just, I don't know if it's wait until the building committee or not, but I asked Alan to check with Gary and Becky on the seat thing. Did you guys do that to see what their thoughts were?
Yeah, I've worked with Becky starting last year, 2 years ago, looking at possibilities and who they use for vendors.
Okay.
And,
Just seeing what was out there. And
Yeah.
We talked with the office.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously. Their experience in those types of things.
Yeah, I
What
reached
not
out.
to do mostly.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Anybody else?
You good with those company team?
we're gonna go back to Sophie. Welcome.
I'm so sorry I was late. I was planning for this all evening and then I worked out and I forgot. So. I had spent all day thinking about it and I got home and I live in Big Arm and so everything was disconnected. I was like, man, it's snowing again.
Okay, all right.
As far as in the high school, we recently, this last weekend, showed the play The Bold, the Young, and the Murdered. And it was like a parody on a soap opera, and it went over really, really well. They had like 250 people come in their 2 nights, which is way higher of attendance than the high schools had for shows before. So it was a funny play. If you got to see it, it was worth it. We have our blood drive coming up on March 14th, which is run by the BOG. So we're talking to local businesses, gathering donations of food and water and things like that for donors. And we'll start sign-ups and advertisement this week. State basketball is upcoming. Everyone's leaving on Thursday. Prom is coming up on the 18th, and I know we've sold 2 tickets so far, so doing great. A lot of us wait till the last moment, including myself, so. There's a choir and band combined honor tour in the end of March, so we're planning for that. I'm a rebel choir and band, so I'm really excited for that. And I think we get to go tour Whitworth, and we get to go see Mamma Mia. So a couple cool things there. HOSA, which is Future Health Professionals of America Club, is going to a regional competition in Missoula, I believe, on the 27th and 28th, and competing in different health science places. The UM Honor Choir went in early February, and that was a couple choir students that were approved and did a wonderful performance under Dr. Edmonds at the UM. Poetry Out Loud had a couple of our students go. There was Ben River, Sophia Speckert, and Geneva De Leon, and Josie Peterson, I believe, all went, and then Ben River actually went to state, and so that was a cool thing. It was kind of a first for us in a long time. Spring sports starts, the meeting's tonight, and it's upcoming, so track, tennis, and softball are all well on their way. And as you heard, Special Olympics is having winter sports competitions right now, and they had a great day up in Whitefish from what I hear.
Any questions for Sophie? Yes.
The blood drive, I noticed on the Red Cross, their app and their website, that it was on there, and now it's only at the hospital the next, I think the hospital is doing it the next day. So they might want to check to make sure that it's being advertised. It was on there for a while, but I noticed it wasn't on
The
there.
high school, we typically don't advertise to the community, just because it's a high risk first. We don't necessarily want strangers coming into the high school. We have high school donors and teachers and people connected to the district. And typically that's what happens. Sometimes someone will wander in, it's typically like a sweet old lady, and we let them know if there's like a spot. But they're like, oh,
So I can
but we don't advertise that. We don't advertise that to the public just because it's kind of a risk. So
Okay. Okay.
Remind me to never wander into that.
well, the last lady,
Nate will take him down.
she's like, hi, I just was driving by and I saw a red and white sign on the front door, and I was like, oh, that's great. And she just wanted to donate, so. Yeah, we had a slot. She told me some great stories.
Anybody else have a question for me? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I'm so sorry I was
You're
late.
fine. Okay, number 5, Wilson Scholarship and Education Foundation. Mrs. DeQueen.
Well, I see that Mr. Gage has abandoned me.
I need payback for last month.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So, luckily, I haven't found it on my phone here. For anybody who wasn't here the last 3 or 4 times, the Poston Scholarship and Education Foundation was given a $15,000 grant at the beginning of the year, and they asked us to give that away. And the original, or the intention of it was, for the donor wanted it to be used in classrooms and in the school for things that were kind of above and beyond normal classroom expenses, yeah. So for special projects. And so this month, we have two. And the first one is for first graders. And Joni Bowen and Whitney Buckman. Okay. I think, see, Joni abandoned us to Pilates. Yeah, I'm going to get her for that, too. Anyway, actually, it would probably be nicer if Whitney, did you mind kind of explaining what the message? So,
we wrote our grants to be able to purchase the materials we need to be able to send home summer kits for our kids. So we are having a second math night in May, and we wanted to be able to give our families a way to bridge over the summer. And so we'll be putting together packets of dice, cards, dominoes, and other math manipulatives that we put together. And then on the math night, we will be giving them all the games and things that they can do with it to help them keep those skills that they need over the course of the year. So that's kind of what we wrote it for. Great, pretty concise.
and the second one, is Mr. Ross here?
Right here.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know what you were doing. Would you like me to
Sure.
explain what you?
I just asked for money for instruments because we always use instruments, and in our district there's low income that can't afford to buy instruments, and that restricts people from being able to participate. So the more school instruments I can have available, the more students we can get to participate. And so I'll be able to get a, actually they arrived today, a trombone and a flute
Oh, great.
for our students to use.
Excellent. So, the school has your money, or should have your money. So, when you need to pay for something, you just have to let them know, and they'll dole it out to you. And thank you so much for your application.
Thank you.
And we have 4 for next month, so.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Any questions for both of your signatures? No? Okay, thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you. No questions?
Okay. Sherry Valley handled with care presentation.
Well, first of all, I apologize. Libby Frost, our counselor, was going to actually make this presentation and would have done a far better job than I. Pass those around. But I'm going to hit the highlights of the Handle with Care program, which is actually her project. Handle with Care, well, I'm going to actually go back. She even wrote me little talking points. Oh, thank you. Talking points. So I better go through it so she knows I did it well. So a recent national survey of the incidence and prevalence of children exposure to violence and trauma has revealed that about 60% of American children have been exposed to violence, crime, and trauma in their life. And we know that it's a huge issue in our community. Every day we are dealing with children that have experienced incredible trauma in their lives, and because of that, we have attendance issues, we have behavior problems, we have health issues, mental health issues, and it just goes on. And we also know that research shows that immediate support and early intervention will help mitigate some of those effects of trauma on children. So the Handle with Care program is a program that Libby is building throughout the reservation. So we've started it here. She started it at Cherry Valley last year. We now are doing it at all the schools. And it's basically a link on the website, on our school or district website, that is available to first responders. So she is also networking with local, state, and tribal law officials, law enforcement, first responders, and tribal health and family services, so that if they come upon an incident, a traumatic incident where there is a child involved, they can let us know. Just basically, it's a link where they get on, they have the child's name, and that says, Handle Johnny with Care today. And we know that as principals and counselors, that child has had some sort of traumatic experience. such as, it could be any of it, such as a drug bust in their home, an arrest of a parent or a sibling, shooting, stabbings, domestic violence, suicide, neglect, severe hunger, physical abuse, sexual abuse, to name a few. One of the reasons that we listed those is because right now at Cherry Valley, we have 5- and 6-year-olds who have experienced those things that we are working with. And so we're talking incredibly severe trauma. What this does is this allows us at the school level to immediately do wraparound support for that child. We may not know the details, because a lot of times that is confidential, but we know that that child has been through something traumatic. And so counselors can immediately move in, support that child. We can take care of their physical needs, sleep. Usually if there's been a police drug bust or something, the child hasn't slept well. So sometimes we're providing places for them to sleep, clean clothes, food, emotional support, check-ins with that child, counseling. We can modify their curriculum, we can modify their instruction, we can kind of back off on any testing that might be being done. We can set up small group experiences for that child that might be overwhelmed in a whole group situation if they are dealing or just coming off a traumatic experience. Reteaching opportunities, just anything we might need to do to support that child through that traumatic experience. One of the things I'm really proud of Libby is that she's really working to make this reservation-wide. So she is working with counselors in Ronan, Charlotte, St. Ignatius, Arlene, working to get this as a reservation-wide support for all of our kids. She also has contacted our law enforcement, is going to be doing some training with them on Handle with Care. A lot of times it's just getting those police officers or those first responders to see that there are children there, to get names where they go to school, and then just fill out a link on the website, which just gives us that heads up that something has happened in that child's life. So I'm just really proud of the networking she's doing. She's also working through Project Launch. Has presented to the superintendents. So this really could be a powerful, it's still just in the beginning stages of development, but could potentially be just a really powerful support for our kids in trauma in the district.
Okay.
So, any questions that I might be able to answer? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to board committee updates. Facilities committee, Alan and Alan.
We're not having a meeting until tomorrow. So, I don't know where Dan is. I'm just gonna talk about the roof, walk through a little bit.
So the roof itself, engineers, architect came out Friday. They did a couple of core samples, and what they're going to end up doing is provide a plan of attack, if you will, by the end of the week. They did, from those 5 core samples, they did find out that the R value of the Folsom Middle School roof is 17. It's recommended to be 38 or better. I think it's actually 39.
Worse than I thought.
But it comes with a disadvantage of once you start adding insulation to the top of that, because all of the scoopers, the pointy walls, all then become covered in insulation, and then you lose the effect of what the water drainage system looks like. And so that's what they're looking at right now. So we should have a better understanding. And again, we were hoping that that project comes in phases. We hope. So just to spread out the longevity of our building reserve funds. So that's what we know about the middle school rep right now. Is they're putting together the plan.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Okay. Policy committee.
Did you meet?
We did not meet.
Okay. Budget committee, I don't think there was anything, there's nothing for negotiations. Class A caucus, Mr. Gibbs.
So most of that, all the money stuff's in committee, and that's the big thing we're considering, thinking about, hoping for. And I have no way to know which way the wind would blow. I kind of want, since there's not too much on that, I was kind of hoping that maybe Rex could fill us in a little bit about House Bill 610, which is the national bill for school vouchers.
Yeah, there's
That seems very wide-reaching, and I think will affect our school greatly if it passed as it currently looks. So.
that one, and also House Bill, I'll talk a little bit later on the local level, is the House Bill 307, which is the non-levy funds that's look like it's moving forward. As far as on the federal front, that 610, we were talking a little bit earlier about it. I made calls into the SAM organization. It's a blend of food, nutrition, healthy children, and the voucher system, which quite seems to be an odd marriage of a bill. The voucher system itself is going to allow parents to send their children to any school in the state and use, again, this is where, I want to get some clarity on it, because if a student chooses to lose or leave our district, we would lose that A and B, our average number belonging. But what happens on the state level, where does that money go? Because potentially if they were not with us, that money goes back to the state, but now the state will turn around and reimburse that student to be somewhere else and potentially a charter school. Where my question was this morning is to find out what's the prognosis of having a charter school within the Polson boundaries in which we would have a student or a group of students that want to go to school in that environment. And that's an option, because really what we're looking at is privatization of schools. So in terms of what that looks like, revenue source, if a student loses or leaves our district, we're going to lose that money anywhere, but where does it go from the state level? Because it's going to then not come back into the coffers of the state. It'll be supporting a student into another school environment.
So one of my questions was that it repeals ESSA, which is Every Student Act. And so then what that act does is assure access to general education curriculum, access to accommodations on assignments, concepts of universal design and learning, and evidence-based interventions. It also, that there's no wording for special needs kids, and I don't know these two terms, no mention of IDEA and FAPA, so I'm not sure what those are.
If you remember listening to the swearing in of our Department of Education Secretary, that was one of our concerns was that the IDEA was, in her opinion, going to be given back to the state level, and it's a federal law. And so I think that in their environment, they need to figure out where IDEA is going to fit into. This 610 is going to give the authority back, the block grant money, back to the local education authority, which would be us. But we have to fulfill, and they haven't spelled out in 610 what the requirements look like to receive that money. And I think that's where my questions will, what considerations do we have to meet to get that block grant money so that we can be funded for our own school or our own district. So there's I don't know if they know what that looks like yet. That's my question. Is what do we have to do to fulfill their requirements for us to receive the block grant? Have you heard that? Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's there yet, but I will certainly have a better idea once I get a hold of Kurt.
Thank you.
And then tied on that too, interesting to this is that then it looks like they are reducing the requirements in the Healthy Children's Act. There was a time that we had these vendors that we had to have low-fat food and low sugar content, and from what I'm reading in that, it looks like they're appealing that as well.
Yeah.
Which,
So then would that then there would be no nutritional standards, or we would have to do that as a district, or would that be state, or how would that, we don't know.
I don't know. If you read into that, it says that they were going to reduce the label, but increase the possibility of more whole grains and fruits and vegetables, which is contradicting each other, right? So you can have higher fat foods, but you also have to eat, but in lieu of that, you also have to allow for more healthier choices.
Right.
That's the trade-off.
So I guess, and like you said, you don't know yet, but it could be possible, I guess what I'm looking at is, we need to change policies and policies to cover what we think is important. I mean, is this gonna be a local control, where we decide how to pick up the slack from ESSA? Is that something that we will have to do here at the district?
Our regional SAM organization does not believe that the ESSA is gonna go away.
Okay.
That's the take that we're getting from our regional president, is that as strong as that language is, and the ESSA goes away, then what's going to replace that for us to be able to, what the federal says, that you guys get local control, you figure out what that looks like.
Right.
We don't think that every student that sees that is going to vanish. It's going to stay in place. So that's the $1,000 question right now, is what is that going to look like, or what will it look like in the next 2 weeks?
Thank you.
I don't have a lot of answers for you.
No.
But I don't know if there's a lot of answers out there.
No, there aren't.
Okay, thank you. All right, transfer, any questions so far from the public? Okay, transportation committee,
Nothing that I reported yet.
nothing? Okay, and nothing on
Just the
superintendent?
bus. Which
Evaluation.
you already mentioned, so.
Okay, so number 8, budget report, oh, it's almost not here. Do we have it now?
Yep.
There.
Well, let's see. Sorry.
You look at the,
Really not, everything that's pretty much going on. It's, we had some more transportation repair stuff, but that's normal. Other than that, the P card, and I think Pamela explained in the last, P card is where I try to pay a lot of bills, like our power bills, big items, transportation, bus, fuel, so on and so forth, because then we get a kickback year end for it, so.
I think what's important to look at is the graphs that are provided from budget to actual, the percentage we're still sitting really good where our budgets are at. We're under from where we're at in year, so I feel comfortable at 57% and 56% respectively, well over half the year in, so we're where we want to be. No red flags, there you go.
Any questions? Okay, number 9, new authority for school facilities levy.
So we're at.
Number 9? Did I miss one?
No.
Sorry.
All right, so as mentioned earlier, we went to the budget symposium last week. About 4 days prior to that happening, we get an email urgent, and you can see if it's yours is in color. There's a lot of red and yellow and urgent written all over this. About 2 years ago, the state performed an audit on statewide school facilities and found that it was in dire needs and were roughly millions of dollars needed to get our facilities adequate. Not great, just up to code. The Quality Schools Grant was a method to help some districts work on infrastructure. But the rub is that's a lottery system, and it's kind of, it really gives 10 schools the ability to help out their needs. So this biennium legislation wanted to make it more equitable for people to get money for their facilities. So Lou Jones is the author of this, and it gets pretty wordy with him. But here's where it boils down to. There's a line item in our budget that is not an assessed, not a non-voted. You have to vote building reserves, as we did for the 2 districts. They're proposing quickly is what they want to have a levy, non-voted levy per district that gives every district the ability to generate funds to help with their facilities. That formula is based on $15,000 per district and $100 a head. Legislation said, no, we don't want that. We don't want to be able to just have you tax your public without, that doesn't seem quite fair. We do that with bus depreciation and adult ed tuition funds, right? Those are non-voted assessed levies. We could raise those when needed. They weren't real comfortable with doing that, but they understand that there's a need to generate funds because buildings are crumbling around us. And so the compromise was that you let people know, and you post it all over the place, and you let them know what a $100,000 and a $200,000 and a $300,000 house, what that's going to look like when you generate $15,000 plus $100 a head. Polson School District could, I say could because there's variables with this, but we could raise about $191,000 for facilities. That seems like a lot, but then you're thinking about the roof project, which I think anywhere from 800 to 1.2 million. A boiler at Cherry Valley is going to be, we asked for 1.4, we will levy in, we'll add 200,000 to that. So, we have a couple of projects right now outstanding that's going to cost us upwards to $2.5–3 million. So $190,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but it does when you think about what we do have: carpets and paint and curbs and gutters, and so it's needed. We'll do that. So here's what is important. We will need to, I was going to do it tonight, but I want to give our public long enough that we will post it to the community so that they understand that there could be a levy, a non-voted levy that will increase taxes. And I'll let you know what that looks like on a $100,000 and $200,000 house, how much that will cost the taxpayer. But we need to have a resolution approved by April 15th. That's the deadline. April 15th. The following year, it needs to be, I think, March 31st is what it is. So they gave us a few days this year. This is not a state-funded resource. This is a local levy. This is local taxpayers supporting that. The following year, they're talking about the state matching that money inside building reserves. Building reserve is a non-voted levy, but they're going to put a line item under that non-voted or that voted levy. Under it, they're going to put a line item that we can do a non-voted levy under it. So we're going to add non-assessed levies to a assessed levy budget. And I would say that's not legal, but the legal team put it together. So there's what we have. So we took it off of an action item, we put it in discussion because I want you to know what that looks like, and more information will come out later. We're going to, with that facilities list that Alan has put together for the last 2 or 3 years, and we haven't had a nickel to put towards it, we might be able to help prioritize what some of those medium range needs look like, not the $1 million needs. Questions for me? That's pretty quick. But I think that's Senate Bill 307.
So did it pass over to the House?
So this is the great thing. They don't even know if it's going to pass yet. They want us to make action. I know. They want us to take action on a bill that the governor hasn't seen yet. So the projection is the House is going to.
So it did pass over from the Senate to the House?
Yes.
Yes.
So when will you need the board to act on this?
We have to have this resolution approved by the next board meeting, which falls under before the April.
Which is April.
Which is
Yeah, and it has to be approved by the 15th.
Can you save up the money each year, or do you have to spend it in each year?
We don't have to. They would like
Not that
us.
we couldn't, but.
We can save it. You have to use it, I believe, in round 2, year 2, or lose it. So you do have to use it. You can't sit there and gain interest. Now, the last thing on this is if we do secure public schools grant funding, we are not eligible for 307 for 1 year because they're trying to make it even. They think we're going to double dip. I just said we have big needs. We can spend it, but we can't. That being said, I thought about today is that the public schools grant is an elementary district grant as it's proposed. So that shouldn't preclude us from going to a high school 307 and still get quality grant on the elementary side. So I'm going to work that angle tomorrow, see if I can get it.
Will the public schools grant let you know before the deadline?
We've made 2 calls into them. They are very hopeful. I understood when we listened to a webinar on 307. and it sounded like they were partially funding partially funding some of the 10 projects out of Quality Schools grant. They assured us it's all or nothing. If they're going to fund it, they're going to fund every Quality Schools grant applicant that received it. And there's 50 some that 200 some that applied it. Just us 9 or 10 that were recipients. And they're going to fund the whole project, all of them.
If it's not a political football.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's.
I guess my other thing is, you certainly, this is an issue that so the school board meeting will be like, as they're all public meetings, but I mean, this definitely affects people in our district, taxpayers, homeowners. So I think you'd want to really advertise that meeting. If that's the one in which we don't have much time, so I mean, in a perfect world, you would want a meeting just for, a public meeting of some kind just for that, in my thinking, just because it's a big deal.
You know, it is. It looks like 6.4 mils is what we're going to ask for. That's going to get us to the 191,000. And so what I want to know, what that looks like to our taxpayers, what's that increase? Is it 25 cents a month? Is it $5 a month? Is it $100 a year? I want to know where we're at first. And so Pamela's crunching those numbers with the county. And once I get that number and see what kind of sticker shock that we have, I want to then be able to talk to you and let you know what that looks like. And then if it's the legislators wanted, the trade-off was that you will let people know. And so town meetings could be that. Although I don't know if I'm going to call it a town meeting.
Yeah, you just don't have time this time, but you certainly would want to advertise it. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, on the bus one, you get permission from the county commissioners? They review what you're saying? I thought that when we talked about that with the bus, it was, we could go this high, but we decided to go this high, and it goes to the county commissioners, and then they approve it.
They approve the final budget,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is not is not like that. This is
It
a
will
totally
be,
different deal.
because next year, when we come with our budget in August, this will be part of that will be submitted to the county and to OPI and May fairs. And so it'll be a part of our general budget.
The board will approve the budget.
So we will bring this forward. I think what you were talking about is that we depreciate buses at a percentage.
I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's where you're at. The bus depreciation, we can go up to 20%, right? And
But
so
we don't ever do that.
we don't. So we may ask. We foresee things coming. And I will say that T5 and T6 are getting older. Let's raise the depreciation value on those guys up so that we can replace them coming down the line. What I don't ever want to do is have those at depreciation levels of 1 and 2 and 3%, which is really easy on the taxpayers. But it's really hard on when we have to go back and pay out a general budget because we have to replace a bus that doesn't work. So smartly, we don't want to raise everything to 20% and have the slush fund. But you also don't want to be working so frequently that you don't have the funds to pay back or to replace a bus. So I think that's maybe what you're looking at.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll discuss this next time.
I got more, and look for emails coming as I get more on this. I'll keep you updated.
So, but does the board, I don't know if the board agrees with me that we need that we want a lot of people at this next board meeting if they want to discuss this? I mean, does the board agree with that should be, is that the direction you want to give the district, that they want to go over and above on advertising or no?
I agree. No, we do want to.
I want feedback.
And I do too.
Okay.
Yeah, and the way that this is written, that we have to do that.
Okay.
We need to let our community know what this looks like.
Okay. Okay?
Yep.
Alright, there we go. Alright, number 10, approval of the payroll claims, travel requests, and activity plans. Do they have any questions, comments about that?
Just a big long list here.
Yep, big one. Just keep scrolling.
Well, there's one thing that pointed out, Jay got some sort of $750 fraudulent charge or some sort.
Oh.
Oh, my P card?
I don't know. I don't know. $750 fraudulent charge.
So on occasion, our P card will get hacked. And it could be that his card is in his desk. We get hacked on occasion, but when we do get hacked, I notice, or we get phone calls from ours, and then they reimburse us. They do.
I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
No, I'm glad you noticed it. Hey, that's the first
Well,
one.
in the
that's
middle
done
of the
it.
city going through all
Yeah.
this credit card thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just afraid we're gonna start getting some
Scott?
media in the house here.
Scott got one up in, I think he went to Tahiti one time.
And to
England.
London.
In England, yeah.
How was it?
It's funny because I
Good
called on
trip.
his landline at work and he was there, so.
Jay is at the donut shop.
So,
That's I think it might be the third time a car,
it's, a lot of it came because, that whole Target thing that went on, and so if anybody had used a P card or anything, any offers, they're really watching everything, so if you run a card, even Mike got flagged at Napa yesterday, or the other day, and he uses Napa all the time. But they flagged him on that one, and we had to go there, so,
Mine probably hasn't been used in a year.
yeah, Jay doesn't shop very much.
but good catch.
Well, just kind of speaking of that though, so the policy on credit card use, we need to maybe start looking into this just because
It's a good question as well.
the news media is starting to look into this kind of thing.
No, it's good, and I'll answer that is, the auditors they're very stringent on how and when and where those cards look like.
And how it relates to policy.
And if you remember, one of their big things was no stamps. So as administrator, we don't have stamps anymore because it can be, yeah, and so stamping, credit card use has really gotten tightened up or down, depending on how you look at it, because of the fraudulent uses with them. So we rely on our auditors pretty heavily on what's appropriate, what's best practice, what's standard industry practices right now.
And I agree, credit cards are a lot easier for a lot of things. So.
I like that, there's some type of competition to see who can earn up the most. But it's all unjust, but just because of the percent back,
For sure.
And I do police those pretty hard, so,
she
you
does.
can ask anyone.
Thank you.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
What are we approving?
The payroll and the, all the claims.
Okay.
Second? Okay, good. Any other questions?
Who made
Shannon did, McGinnis seconded.
Okay. All in favor?
It's called hazing.
Aye. Anybody else opposed? Oh, good. Okay, here we go. Number 11, recommendation to approve rehire of administrators.
Right.
Superintendent, sorry.
Trustees, before you are the names of the tenured administrators that I recommend for reapproval or approval of hire for the 17-18 school year. You'll note there's one administrator that's not on that, it's Mr. Sampson, he's a non-tenured administrator.
We have a non-tenured on that list.
Oh yeah, which is Ms. Powell.
Okay, any questions?
So, of the two principals, I think we're looking at here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were these, I didn't see any advertisements.
For what one, Mr.?
Cherry Valley High School.
So as we talked about
ARV.
last week, we had, we posted as soon as the meeting was over, and last month anyway, high school principals posted through Office of Public Instruction, was out on the internet, it was statewide. Received applicants for it, screened applicants, one met, so that was the high school principal.
Okay.
Interviewed, second round for me, and that's my recommendation is to go with the high school principal, Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
Went through the process, vetted it, sent it statewide, so proud enough to forward his name for a recommendation. As I mentioned last meeting, Rhonda Krell was not posted, and in fact I was going to recommend her for hire as she went through the interview process last year. She interviewed, applied for a job, interviewed, went through the second round with me as the superintendent. That's where I recommended her last year for an interim, and I'm going to recommend her again this year for hire. without going through the interview process because she already went through that. That's past practice. We did that with Mr. Yarborough at the middle school about 3 or 4 years ago. I believe that the interview for the process was an interim, then removed the label of interim and made him assistant principal without making him go back through the interview process again.
And that's why we interviewed Mr. Wells that second time or whatever, so that if we wanted to move him.
So
Okay, so I would,
we could remove a name from this list for consideration.
Say that again.
If the board chose to, we could motion to remove a name from this list and consider it separately. So that would be an option to do.
No, I'm just curious on the process because I didn't really see much, so.
I move that we accept the recommendations from the hires.
I'll second.
any questions from the public or any other follow-up questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, number 12. Recommendation to approve MOU with the PEA. Mr. Crosby.
Okay, this came as a result of a meeting that we had, a district-wide meeting, which is new this year. The PPAS is our professional development. So if you remember back to the last couple of years, a tenured teacher is evaluated once every 3 years, and on the intermediary 2 years, they're in charge of doing a professional growth plan, which is called PPAS. That was developed 2-3 years ago now. In that process, there were some deadlines that were outlined. The deadline for submitting the plans, deadline for a committee to revise to look at those plans and to approve those plans. We've been doing it now for 2 years, and so now what we have is we have a district-wide committee that oversees that process. Each building has its own professional growth team that looks at the plans, approves the plans, and then so now we have an overarching team that we call the Quality Assurance Team. One of the suggestions from the Quality Assurance Team when we met a couple of weeks ago was that we needed to do something with the deadlines. The deadline for submitting a plan for the following year, for next year, was determined to be the first Friday in April. There is a second submission date, which is in October. Everybody really wanted to use the April submission deadline because if you put it in April and there was some questions about it, you could revise that plan and submit it again in October. If you just turned it in October, you couldn't have that chance to do that. The reason for having an April deadline initially was that a number of people do a lot of work over the summer, professional development. They might do a university course, or they might travel to another state to do a course in music, for example. And so they wanted their plans approved by April. The April deadline became a little problematic last year, both for teachers and administrators. For teachers, the problem was that we had at least 10 teachers that actually had their positions changed after the April deadline. So there were a number of teachers who actually made plans, submitted the plans, had the plans approved, but then later on they were told that they had a different position. So then they had to redo their plans. From the administrator's perspective, it's a little problematic having that April deadline because particularly if you have a non-tenured teacher who's going into tenure, you're not sure if you're going to retain that teacher or not. So for those couple of reasons, the way we addressed that was we want to add in a new deadline, which will be in June. The deadline would be determined as 1 week after the last day of school. The reason we're doing it as an MOU is that the PPAS document, which outlines all of the constraints that the teachers have to go through, is part of a negotiated agreement. And so if you remember from negotiations last year, a master agreement goes along with the PPAS document and also the EPAS, which is the formal assessment. So in order for teachers to take advantage of this new deadline, we had to submit this as an MOU, so teachers this year could submit their plans in April if they're doing professional development over the summer. They could do it in June, which we would prefer them to do it, and then they can also do it in October. So the reason it's an MOU is that we haven't done negotiations this year. The idea is that if you give approval for this and we go ahead and do it, when we go through negotiations this year, we will change the language in the PPAS document. So from now on, it would be that way. It's a little bit complicated, but it's all to do with deadlines and it's all to do with tweaking the system. We're having another meeting on Wednesday morning, early Wednesday morning, and there's some other issues that we're going to be dealing with. But this was the one issue that dealt with the language that is negotiated. Some of the other issues are not necessarily to do with that. So we would just ask your commission to go ahead and add in this additional deadline for us. And if you had any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
So the issue for the administrators is that they could possibly spend time reviewing plan for a teacher who will not be.
So the way it was explained at our last meeting was that a teacher might be coming to the administrator and saying, I would like to do my plan on such and such and such and such for the following year, but the administrator may not know if they have a position for that person, or they may know that they're going to change that person's position, but they're not at liberty to do that at that time.
At what date do we do that?
Well,
For the next school year?
Well, it's usually into May. We're talking, as deadline's early April, so we're talking April, May is when we start talking about positions.
I have one question.
Sure.
Since I've been on negotiations for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like, it seems like we've tweaked these dates a lot. And we've it doesn't seem to be flowing like I think the process was supposed to flow.
Well, the dates themselves are actually, we haven't changed any dates. This is the first time we've actually wanted to change a date. Those dates were determined 3 years, was it 3 years ago now? At least 2 years ago when that initial plan was made. And there was a lot of discussion during those meeting times as to what the dates would be. And maybe that's what you're thinking about, because I know there was a lot of time spent on deadline dates. But once the document went out, then that hasn't changed.
It's important to note also that we did in negotiations change dates, but that was on the EPAS, which is the formal evaluation cycle, is when those due dates were changed. We changed those, they went up about 2 weeks earlier than normal in negotiations, and so dates have changed, right? We changed the deadlines for the first non-tenured evaluations, and then the non-tenured and tenured evaluations at the end of the year. And those dates have been changed. The PPAS, which is professional growth, is the dates out. We're looking at an extension of another submittal date for the first time.
So this June date falls after all of those dates that things can change for
Well,
teachers.
basically the
Correct.
June date allows people to pretty much know that I'm going to be doing this next year.
Okay.
And so I can reasonably put together a plan that would reflect what I'm going to be doing the following year. Does that explain it?
So you're basically just submitting to add the June date.
Add the
Right
June
now
date.
you have April, you have October, you're just wanting to add.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I would entertain a motion at this point. So moved? Second? All right. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
It's complicated at best.
Okay. Number 13, recommendation to approve resolution of school closure by declaration of emergency, snow day, February 9th, 2017. Superintendent Close.
I'll first go on record by saying I'm glad that, I feel thankful that we've had one. There could have been a few more, as our neighboring districts are finding out that per the recommendation in the memo here is that through the ARM, you can see through the code, You see that I printed that, or we had it attached. 20-9806 allows us to have a school closure and declaration of emergency due to weather unforeseen circumstances. Bullet, or number 2 on the bottom of that MCA allows trustees to grant 1 day non-pupil instructed reschedule. You see that on the last page of that, through this declaration. And so what I recommend is that we do pass a resolution. It's a declaration of emergency, unforeseen weather circumstance. We don't reschedule pupil instruction day, but we do have teachers coming back in for a contracted work day. This is similar to what we did, I think, 2 years ago. And that day that we came back was President's Day, if you remember that. I've met with administrators and we were looking at each building having their ability to designate what's best for them in their building, to have a contracted work day. One building may come back Monday following the last day of school. Some may hold a parent-teacher conference night, a couple nights to get their contracted day. But each building will have what's best for them. So that's my recommendation, is to pass this resolution, declaration of emergency.
And does this have to be, does each administrator have to have this put in here soon, so you know of that day prior to?
Yeah, I have not reached out to our staff. Before I jumped on that, I wanted to know where our board sat, and so that will determine what our next steps will be. If we pass this declaration, then we will reschedule the workday. If the board so chooses to have students back in seats, then we got to figure out what day that looks like. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a day I'm thinking of. I've had several teachers come to me and say, well, I went to work and I was there anyway. So they're concerned that they worked that day anyway.
And I think most of them, I won't say all, but most of them were told that also.
I wouldn't say all either.
So they could go home, right? It's a snow day. So at any time as a professional and there's not kids, you can go home. We did talk about in our administrative meeting, and I think what we will do in the future is that we will definitely make sure that when we call a closure and kids can't be there, is that staff will know that you can stay and work if you want, but this will not be credited for a work day. You can go home at any time you want. We didn't say that this time, nor have we, I don't know if we've ever said that. So the potential of what that looks like for each building, that's the onus with the administrators, but what we said is that at that time when you know kids are not going to be in your building, it's your choice to stay or not, and so they can go home. What we want to do is have quality control and what that looks like in building wide. So if we have 5 people that stayed in the building and we bring in a guest speaker, we don't want to say, well, I was already here for 2 days, or I was already here for the day, so I don't have to come to that one. So that doesn't help us as a district when we have the inability to manage what the professional development looks like.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I think the issue was with this last issue was a lot of them were already there, and then things progressed and late school and canceled.
Yeah.
So they're already there.
Yeah.
So they just decided to stay there. So that might be an issue that I have to look at.
Yeah.
It was more than one. It was probably 6 that came in.
Yeah.
Would that be something that you change in like your policy of how you look at that in future years? Like, I mean, what if we have another like snow day here before the end of the school?
Procedurally, I don't think we can do it in policy, but on the procedure side, we would say school's canceled today due to the weather. Deteriorating road conditions are not coming in. If you choose to stay, that's not going to be credited for your contracted work day for this day. Feel free to go home at any time. If you want to stay, it's on your accord. But we have, in case, so there's better communication, lessons learned, is that if my middle school wants to do a parent-teacher conference night, and we invite all the parents back for that night, for that contract, which is great for our parents and teachers to be able to communicate. But I have 3 people saying, I'm not going to show up because I already came in. All right, I already put my time in. That's not good for us across the board. So we're going to rethink how we communicate that next time.
I have one question.
Any other questions?
Not that this really is going to apply, but
if we would have rescheduled school, if the board rescheduled another day of school, and those teachers already have worked that day, so then they're a day over what they're contracted for?
Yeah, we'd have to, they would have worked it for free, because they were coming back when kids are in that's that's the conversation, what's it look like when you're a kid come back? And then when do we do that? Just remember, there was, Doug can, you can attest to this, is that 2 years ago, we did come back on President's Day, and people had already had flights, grandma's house visits, and we had all that, and so those people had already had made their plans, and then had to take a personal day to cover their, because they were leaving. That wasn't a great way to build relationships in our district. That didn't go over very well. And so right now, our opportunity is to, spring break, we bring back during spring break. We'll have a full day support, or come back Memorial Day, or come back Monday, following the last day of school. And those are really critical times when people have already made plans. So that's why my recommendation is this, is that non-instruction pupil time, contracted work, contracted time.
Okay, any other questions? I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved, and you second. You are, you know, all
Was
the
that Mr. Dupuy?
No, Mr. Ryan.
Or-
Do we have a second?
Who's second?
Cindy?
Same second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, number 14, a recommendation to approve personnel report. Mr. Elliott.
We have a report for each district. The high school district, everything is pretty much standard. We are getting around to hiring our track coaches, the assistant coaches. I know that was a concern of a board member or two that we get moving on that. And so that is on our report for the high school this month. Our elementary report is also standard. I do want to point out we have a very long time teacher that has tendered his retirement, taking advantage of the incentive. And so I would just like to acknowledge Mr. Koval, his longtime service with the school district. And I would just ask that you approve the reports as submitted.
Any questions?
I was just gonna move the
Great, go
report,
ahead.
approve the high school personnel report.
Second.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, elementary district.
I'll vote that we approve the elementary school district personnel report.
Second. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Both personnel reports are passed. Okay, last one, recommendation to approve other district report. Superintendent report.
Trustees, we had 3 in the high school, 2 10th graders and 1 9th grader that administration checks on, and they recommended me to you have approved for entrance.
Any questions? Would entertain a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any other questions?
Was that all of a second?
I think it was Stephen. Sorry.
You guys sound a lot similar down there.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Anything else? This meeting is adjourned. And I'm gonna be gone. I'm coming to you.
You didn't, yeah. You didn't, so I could get it.